What is up, guys? We are here today to talk about Halo, the series on Paramount Plus. I am a huge fan of the Halo franchise. I've played every single Halo game since Halo Combat Evolved, and I love this lore. I love the lore that Bungie created, and I could not wait for the series to come out. But what did I think about Episode 1? Find out after the jump. The series begins on planet Madrigal, a desert planet. Not that desert planet. No, not that one. Not that one either. Ah, there we go. Just off the bat, this series takes place in the Silver Timeline, a new timeline as opposed to the games universe, which is referred to now as the core canon. Madrigal does appear in the core canon in a novel called The Cole Protocol. Madrigal is an outer colony, which means it has vastly different technology to that of the UNSC, as you can tell from their vastly outdated weaponry and vehicles. These outer colonies usually also have greater disdain for Earth and the UNSC. We can also see that this series takes place in the year 2552, which is the year the Human Covenant War ends in the core canon, but in this timeline, that does not appear to be the case because the Covenant is not well known yet throughout the galaxy. We are introduced to the series through the perspective of the insurrectionists, and I really like that. We get a very grounded feel for the series. In core canon, insurrectionist forces splintered away from the rest of humanity in order to forge out their own paths, and the results were not particularly peaceful for the most part. It was one of the reasons why the Spartan 2 project was created in the first place, before being adapted to fight the Covenant later on. I especially like the scene when a bunch of insurrectionists are sitting around together playing poker and sharing their war stories. They describe the Spartans in a very scary way, essentially they're boogeymen, and it only adds to the impact of their arrival later on. We also get a little taste of the political aspect of this series as we can see Burn Gorman's character, Vinsher Grath, pushing propaganda on the TV. Propaganda is a big part of this series, I guess, going forward, because we also learn later on in the episode that the Spartans, in turn, are being pushed as propaganda by the UNSC, with Master Chief specifically being touted as humanity's greatest weapon. I feel like the first season of the show is going to focus a lot on the conflict between the insurrectionists and the UNSC and Earth. I hope we get to see a lot more of the nuance to it that we get in the core canon, because in this premiere, it feels very generic by the end, and I really didn't like that. I love the multicultural look of this series, as there appears to be a nice blending of cultures, especially Asian and Eastern influences on the Magical Outpost. We are introduced to the character of Kwan Ha, the daughter of Magical's leader, Jin Ha, as she and her friends are searching for drugs outside the outpost. She discovers a Covenant ship and all hell breaks loose as the Covenant kills all of her friends with their plasma weapons. And we see the destructive force of these plasma weapons as they're just popping off limbs and just exploding everything around them. We then see the Covenant break through the outpost defenses, and this whole sequence that follows is fantastic. The insurrectionists are totally outmatched against the Sangheili, or elites, and they absolutely get ravaged with their outdated weaponry doing no damage whatsoever. The effects are a little wonky at times, but overall I can look past a lot of that because I really like the look of the elites for the most part. They're a little beefy and they act more tank-like than they do in the video games, but it's something I don't really want to nitpick. This scene in particular is absolutely brutal, and the series really shows it is not going to hold anything back in the depiction of this war. You even see the one elite in particular slaughter an entire room full of children, and that's just really the tip of the iceberg so far. This battle also leads to the heroic arrival of Master Chief, aka John 117, as he leads the members of Silver Team to help take down the Covenant attacking the colony outpost. Silver Team consists of Master Chief, Kai 125, the group sniper, Vanek 134, who appears to be the tanky member of the group, and Riz 028, who looks to be a communications expert and a close quarters combat expert. The look of the Spartan armor in action is great, and I personally like the distinct look each member of the team has. We see them go to work, and the Spartans just start taking down elites by any means necessary, using assault rifles, pistols, lead pipes, and even their enemies' own plasma pistols. The reason why the Spartans' weapons are more effective is because after the Covenant first appeared, even the most advanced weapons of the UNSC were not doing enough to kill them. So they switched all of their ammunition to armor-piercing and full metal jacket rounds in order to do the most damage possible. The show does take us into Master Chief's point of view for a little bit, giving us a look at the Spartan HUD, for this show, and to be honest, I don't know if I was a fan of this. It looked kind of bad, and while it was no homage to the game, I would have preferred if we kept the action outside of the helmet to stop the jarring transitions. We see an Elite refer to Master Chief as Demon, and I know a lot of you remember that from the games, but what you may not remember is that the Covenant actually referred to all Spartans as demons, with the Master Chief very specifically being referred to as the Demon. I have to compliment the show on the sound design. Everything from the Elite's classic wart wart to the shield regen, to the sound of the Spartans' footsteps were all great, and I really enjoyed the nostalgic sounds mixed with fresh ones. Speaking of shield, when Chief ducks behind cover to wait for his shield to regenerate, I got severe matchmaking flashbacks, but it was awesome to see. Which leads to the one part of this sequence I personally did not like, which was Master Chief picking up and using the same turret that the insurrectionists were using, but somehow now it magically does all of the damage, whereas before it was doing nothing to these Elite warriors. By the end of the battle, Quan Ha is the only person out of 150 colonists on the outpost to survive, and we see the cold, focused nature of the Spartans as they just leave her distraught alone to look for the Covenant ship, which leads us into the opening sequence. Now, it is a pretty cool opening. I like seeing Chief just there, having the armor envelop him with the classic Halo Gregorian chant being sampled and utilized for the opening. I think it's really cool, simple, and just gets us into the feel for the show right away. I mean, what a way to start the show. We get a small taste of this universe before everything goes to hell, and we truly see the gruesome parts of this conflict. It really helps to lock people into this universe and have them glued to their seats, not knowing what comes next, so they're more focused to the episode than they normally would any other show. The Spartans discover the Covenant ship, which is a Phantom, with Vanek and Riz going to inspect it while Chief and Kai go to look in the cave that the Covenant were working in. It is here that Chief discovers a Forerunner artifact in this Forerunner cave that the Covenant was excavating in. It activates upon him touching it, giving him memories of what appears to be his childhood. There is actually a lot to unpack here. In the core canon, the Forerunners were a highly advanced and ancient species who took upon themselves the role of caretakers of the galaxy, and believed that this mantle of responsibility had been passed down to them by the Precursors, an even more powerful race that preceded the Forerunner civilization. Before their disappearance from the galaxy, the Forerunners would name humanity their successors, identifying them with the title Reclaimers. This essentially leads to the Covenant's hatred of humanity, but we will touch on that later. Also in the core canon, while the Spartan 2 test subjects are brainwashed to be loyal fighters for the UNSC, they retain their memories of childhood, and most of them have come to terms with the trauma that they experienced. In this silver timeline, it appears that the test subjects of the Spartan 2 program were kidnapped and had their memories of their childhood suppressed, which makes the UNSC look a lot worse, especially Dr. Halsey. A Sangheili Elite sees all of this happen and escapes, activating his cloaking as he does, knocking out Quan and jumping into his Banshee, leaving. I'm not gonna lie, I'm very curious if this Elite ends up becoming this timeline's version of the Arbiter. Chief orders Silver Team to take the Phantom back to Reach, and he will take Quan Ha by himself in his Condor. Kai states that is against protocol, which means we are essentially getting the Halo 5 storyline of Chief going rogue, except now it is in the first episode of the series. Yeah, I don't know how I feel about this. I know they give him a reason to start to question things, but I wish we had some more time to know this stoic soldier Master Chief before we begin to humanize him too much. We then transition to Reach, the greatest UNC stronghold besides Earth, and we meet Dr. Halsey and Admiral Parangoski. Both characters are close to their portrayals in the core canon, and the Admiral informs Halsey that after Madrigal, the UNSC wants to shut down the Spartan 2 program, which is nothing new because of the controversial nature of this program in general, and because they're always looking for a reason to close it down in the core canon anyway. Parangoski is your typical no-nonsense Admiral, while Halsey is just as shady as she was in the games. The Admiral discovers a clone of Halsey in the lab and tells her to shut it down. This is because cloning in Halo is illegal. The Spartan 2 program is so controversial because they use rapidly grown clones of the test subjects to be left behind after their abduction, which end up dying within 6 months, so the parents of the test subjects would think their children are dead and not abducted. This clone of Halsey will most likely be used to create Cortana, who is a smart AI. Smart AI created from the brainwaves of a living being, but that person usually dies in the process. In core canon, Halsey creates altered clones with an emphasis on intelligence to use for her smart AI. Another departure is the name Cortana appears to already have been chosen, as we hear Parangoski reference the Cortana program. where in the core canon, smart AI usually name themselves. We're then taken to the space mushroom that is the Covenant holy city of High Charity. We see the High Prophet Mercy being escorted by Covenant honor guards, and I have to say the effects on the Prophets are really good. I really like their look here. We're introduced to Maki, who is a human living amongst the Covenant, who is apparently treated as some holy figure and respected by the Prophets. She's informed that the Covenant was unable to attain the artifact, which she somehow was able to know the exact location of. And Mercy informs her that Master Chief was able to bring the artifact to life. This whole scene really has me interested in what comes next for the storyline, because the Prophets should hate all of humanity, because they're the ones that know the big secret, that humanity was chosen by the Forerunners, which makes all the religion of the Covenant one giant lie. So why do they have Maki? Do they not know the secret of the Forerunners yet, or are they manipulating her because they need a human to be able to activate the Forerunner objects, especially a Halo ring? Only time will tell on this, I suppose. Back on the Condor, we're introduced to Miranda Keyes as she appears before Quan as a hologram to try and get Quan to convince the other colonies to join the war effort against the Covenant, which doesn't really go great. This version of the character is more of a scientist than a captain, but she is still the child of Halsey and Jacob Keyes, this time taking more after her mother. We meet Commander Jacob Keyes, and he comes to talk to his daughter and inform her that the UNSC has activated Article 72 on Quan, which means her execution for the greater good. I really like the portrayal of Miranda and Jacob Keyes so far. I think they both did quite good, given some of the cringy dialogue they have to work with. However, this series of events does not paint the UNSC in a great light and makes them look pretty dumb, to be honest. Chief and Quan share a meal together, and it is here we learn that John was involved in the death of Quan's mother. She was at a peaceful meeting of colonists when a group of Spartans, including John, came and killed everyone. Master Chief says the original mission was to take the organizer, but the orders changed, and Quan tells him that maybe he should question those orders. In a gift from the perfect timing gods, Master Chief just then gets the order to execute Quan, which he ignores, of course, and goes rogue. On Reach, we hear Parangoski call for a full Soren protocol. Soren 066 is the first rogue Spartan, who we will meet later on in the series. We see UNSC Marines move out, grabbing battle rifles and storming to take down Master Chief if necessary. We also see pilots, gunners, and a bunch of weaponry that we see in the game Halo Reach, which I thought was so cool. We see Silver Team suit up here in their Mjolnir armor, using the Brock armor mechanism. Halsey also pulls her Spartans aside and tells them to disobey orders, to protect Master Chief at all costs, even if it means firing on friendlies. Again, showing us how dangerous and manipulative Dr. Halsey is. Now, this next scene is going to be widely discussed, I'm sure, and it is, of course, the scene where Master Chief removes his helmet to gain Quan's trust. First off, in this scene, we do get confirmation that the armor Chief is wearing is the Mark 6 Mjolnir armor, so they are keeping the Mark system in this series in reference to the Spartan armors. Next, the big reveal is kind of underwhelming. I mean, we all had already assumed that we would see his face in the series, but he just kind of looks like the actor. No offense to Pablo Schreiber, but I was expecting something a little different to kind of curb our expectations. It is essentially just his face, and he's a very handsome guy. He has a great face, but I was expecting something a little more, with something as epic as the reveal of Master Chief's face. Just then, the Condor is hit with an EMP, which sends them landing on Reach. Before all hell breaks loose, Chief reaches for the artifact again, and Forerunner symbols appear. It activates, which causes Chief to have more visions of his parents, a white dog, and a drawing of an artifact from his childhood. The device emits a huge burst of energy, which jumpstarts the Condor and allows Chief to escape with Quan, ending the episode. Now, I really enjoyed this first episode. I have my complaints with it, but to be completely honest, there are a lot less than I was expecting there to be. The first half of the episode was very strong, and a great way to introduce new people into the world of Halo, but I think the show sinks during the second half. The dialogue is off, and the plot starts to become very generic, leaving me worried for the story moving forward. I was kind of hoping for more nuance in the conflict between the UNSC and the insurrectionists, but the way they show it, it presents it to us in a way that makes the UNSC just very clearly a big bad corporate organization, military machine. But these are the people we're supposed to be rooting for in the end. These are the people that win the war against the Covenant, so I really want a little bit more complexity in this story. that we haven't gotten yet. There was just a lot of simplicity in the story, and I hope we get to see that fleshed out in future episodes, because I really don't want the show to be Master Chief and Quan on the run from the UNSC for half the season. I want a Halo show that is more Halo than The Mandalorian. I thought the effects were fine for the most part. I really enjoyed the sound editing and the score. I thought the look of the series so far is great, with the look of the Marines and Spartans really standing out for me. What I want moving forward is for the show to really start getting more into the lore of Halo, more into the universe itself, and back off the political aspect just a little bit. I know they are trying to tell their own story and trying to make it relatable, but the part of what makes Halo so iconic is the fascinating world building that Bungie created in their games, and I really wanted to be immersed in that. Like I said, it was a good start for the show, but it was the first episode, so only time will tell how this series stacks up in the end, but I'm really looking forward to episode 2, and I want to see more of this series. If you like this video, don't forget to give me a huge thumbs up. Comment down below your thoughts on the Halo series, and if you're new to the channel, subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can stay up to date on all of our newest videos. And until next time, guys, catch you later.